And I was a labor and delivery nurse, postpartum nurse, so I've always worked in women's health, and I love being around. First off, I want to tell you a little bit about what we're doing at Modern Milk to support breastfeeding moms during COVID-19. We're offering virtual lactation consults right now. So they are $99. You can head over to our website, modernmilk.com, follow us at Modern Milk, and myself, and we have 2 other lactation consultants. So we're doing virtual consults right now and phone consults. So you can book those on our website. And we're doing all of our educational classes live stream as well. So this Thursday night, I have Breastfeeding 101. And that is for new moms who haven't had their baby yet and maybe haven't breastfed or did breastfeed and wanted to do things a little bit differently this time. So if you guys want to take my Breastfeeding 101 class this Thursday, go to modernmilk.com. You can sign up for the class there. It's $75 and it is live, so it's 6:30 p.m. Arizona time, which for you East Coasters might be a little late. But I'm going to put in a coupon for $15 off of that class. The coupon's going to be legendary. I'm going to do that after this live stream. So if you're going to sign up, wait a couple hours so I have some time to do that. But I'd love to have you guys take my Breastfeeding 101 class. The virtual consults, I'm hoping that we're going to keep doing those even after, we're able to go back into the store. So anyways, let's get started with what I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight. I kind of have some tips and tricks I wanted to give you, but I also took notes on the most common questions that I saw throughout the day on Legendary's feed and then also on our feed. But basically tonight we're talking about new babies and what it's like in those first 2 weeks of motherhood and breastfeeding, and how to make things a little bit easier, answering your questions, all of the ups and downs that go along with that time period. I always tell moms I think the first 2 weeks are the hardest, because not only are you trying to take care of a baby that you haven't taken care of before and getting to know them, you're also very tired, and then you're trying to figure out breastfeeding on top of it. And you get a lot of curveballs thrown at you, lots of breastfeeding challenges during that time. So I want to give you guys my best tips on kind of how to overcome some of those challenges and answer your questions as well. So I also want to make note of kind of what we're going through during this time, because with COVID-19, we're not having that support as we normally do as new parents, having maybe our mothers, our mother-in-laws, our family coming over and helping. We don't have that now like we did a few months ago. Maybe we were planning on having family come visit us, and now it's just you and your significant other and a baby, and you're doing everything all yourself without any support, or just having somebody there to talk to in your own house. So if you're feeling a little stressed by that, and if you're feeling emotional, maybe you're not even sure how you're feeling because of it, I think that's normal, and I think we're all trying to figure it out. But there are places where you can get support. Obviously, Legendary Milk is great. You can reach out to us, call your mom friends. There's a lot of people out there offering virtual help right now, so take advantage of it. I also wanted to talk about that picture that was posted for tonight's talk. So I know it was a little bit triggering for some people. We got mostly positive comments and people relating to that. A few negative comments, which is okay. We all have our opinions. And that picture isn't meant to scare anyone. I think it's just meant to kind of acknowledge what a lot of moms go through. And to me, I think it's a catch-22. You have a friend, maybe a sister, somebody's pregnant, and they've never had a baby before. You're not going to go up to them and say, oh, here's a list of all the terrible things that could happen to you when you're breastfeeding or when you have a new baby. Nobody would appreciate that advice. So a lot of times people are saying, why aren't we talking about this? And I think people are, but also, you don't want to scare your friend who's excited to have a new baby. So some of it is just, being polite and, trying to be excited for them as well. We don't want to sugarcoat things also, but, some people have a harder time, and that's okay. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to acknowledge it. Yeah, I think it is real life too. And I think it's okay. And, a lot of us will get through it and look back and think, wow, I did that. So as much as we can support each other and kind of help each other out, and especially reach out to our friends that have had babies and say, hey, how are you doing? Are you having a hard time? Because they may not come out and tell you, but maybe if you ask, they will. Okay. Yeah, nobody tells you how hard it can be, right? But you're not going to be at a baby shower and be like, hey, listen up, this is going to be really hard. It's going to suck for a while, but you can do it. So maybe we can just do a little bit of helping afterwards. But all right, you guys, I'm going to go over some simple steps that I came up with for breastfeeding. So I took the word simple and I made it into an acronym. So S, these are kind of things that I think are important in that first few days, those first few weeks of breastfeeding to get you off to a good start. So S stands for simple. The S in simple stands for skin to skin. So skin to skin contact is really great for breastfeeding. And that is baby in a diaper and you with your top off. So the reason skin to skin is so great is because it wakes baby up, it gets them ready to feed. It also helps increase prolactin, which can help boost your milk supply. So the more skin to skin you can do, especially in those early days of breastfeeding, is huge. And a lot of times it can really help bring in your milk supply a little bit sooner and also help you get in more feedings with baby, because a swaddled baby, yay, somebody's breastfeeding right now, good for you. A swaddled baby in a bassinet is going to sleep. If you have a sleepy baby that you are constantly trying to wake up to breastfeed, if you're worried that they're not getting those feedings in because they're so sleepy, unswaddle them and get them skin to skin. But there's actually research that proves that skin to skin can help with breastfeeding. So do lots of skin to skin. I. So the I in simple stands for immediately following birth. So I like to get that first feeding in as soon as possible. Within that first hour, babies are really ready to breastfeed. And so plan for that. Say, okay, after I have my baby, I want to make sure and I want to get that feeding in as soon as possible. And that can really set you off to a good start as well. M stands for mini feedings. So mini feedings, M-A-N-Y, mini feedings, meaning all around the clock, feeding on demand. It feels that way. The more feedings you get in those early days and weeks of breastfeeding, the better, because that is help laying the foundation for your milk supply. So breast milk is a supply and demand system. So the more baby feeds or the more you pump, the more it signals your body to make milk. So feeding baby on demand, you'll hear that term. That just means feed baby when they're hungry, especially in those early days. You're not going to be able to get your baby on a schedule, and that's okay. Don't stress about getting your baby on a schedule. Feed them when they're hungry, and that's really going to do wonders for your milk supply. I'm going to talk a little bit later about feeding frequency and how often babies should be feeding in those first couple of weeks, because I did get a lot of questions about that. But in those first few weeks, feed as much as you can, especially in those first few days, because that's going to help bring in your milk sooner. So the more feedings that you can get in, day 1, day 2, day 3 after delivery, hopefully your milk will come in sooner. P stands for position and pumping. So position, how we're positioning the baby. Positioning goes along with latch, and I'm going to talk a little bit about latch too, because I got a lot of questions about that. But proper positioning is going to set you up to have a good feeding and to hopefully have a better latch. So when you are sitting up to breastfeed, you want to be at a nice, comfortable spot. You want good back support, maybe a nursing pillow if you're using one. If you had a C-section, I find that football hold, so nursing on the side, can be comfortable in those early weeks if your incision is still sore. If you are using a pillow, I like to put that pillow on the side if you're doing football hold. If you're doing a cross, I like to get that pillow up like right under your boobs. Make it a boob shelf. It can really help hold and support baby. So you're not having to lift up, hold baby, try to latch, get that right. I think pillows and the right props can really help you in those early days when you're working on latch. Pumping. So why would you need to pump in the first couple of weeks of having a baby? So I'm going to talk a lot about this as well because I did get a lot of questions in regards to pumping. But in those first few days, in those first couple of weeks, if baby isn't latching for some reason, or if you're separated from baby, then you would want to make sure to pump. So if you deliver in a hospital, if baby isn't latching or has to go to the NICU, they will get you set up with a pump in the hospital. You do not need to bring your pump to the hospital with you. When you go home, if baby still isn't latching, if you're really working on latch, and that's okay. Sometimes, babies aren't born latching. Sometimes it takes some practice, and that's totally okay. But you want to make sure that you are working on your supply as well. So that's what pumping is going to do, that whole supply and demand. If you have a baby that's not latching or is in the NICU, you want to make sure that you pump. So we're creating that good milk supply. So then later on, we're not playing catch up and trying to boost our milk supply. So that's the only reason you would really need to pump in those first couple of weeks. If breastfeeding is going well and baby's latching, I usually tell moms in that first month, just get the hang of breastfeeding. Don't stress about extra pumping. Don't stress about having to have a huge freezer stash of milk. You don't need to worry about that yet. You have enough on your plate. So we want you to get confident with breastfeeding, practice breastfeeding, feel good with the latch, feel good with the positioning, and then you can bring out your pump and you can start pumping a little bit extra, usually when baby's around 4 weeks old. Somebody asked, what did M stand for? Oh, mini feedings. There you go. You guys are listening. Yay. There may be other reasons that you need to pump in those first few weeks. If you have to leave baby, maybe if you have to go to the doctor or you have to leave baby at home, whatever the situation is, you may need to pump to leave a bottle, and that's okay. What does she say? They brought a pump in my room, but nobody told me that I had to pump every 2 hours. Yeah. I know sometimes you really have to be an advocate for yourself, depending on the hospital, how busy they are, depending on, who your nurse is. They may not give you the correct information. So if baby isn't latching, we want you guys to start pumping at least within, 4 to 6 hours after delivery, and pump about every 3 to 4 hours. So you can start ramping up that milk supply. But again, you do not need to pump extra. If baby's breastfeeding and things are going well, you don't need to add that to your plate right now. Latch. Okay, so I got a lot of questions about latch, and latch is tricky because latch is the one thing that can really throw breastfeeding off of the rails. So if you have a bad latch, then you get sore nipples, and then baby doesn't get as much milk from the breast, and then your milk supply goes down, and then baby doesn't want to nurse because there's not enough milk there. So latch is super important, and I feel like it's one of those things that people do not seek help for as much as they should. I have had so many moms tell me, hey, I've had sore nipples for 6 weeks. And I'm like, 6 weeks? Why didn't you come in after week 1? But latch is really important because it can cause so many hiccups with breastfeeding. Sore nipples being the obvious one, but baby not getting enough milk supply. So we really want to make sure that we have a good latch. So here's my crochet boob, which I got on Amazon, and I love it. Oh, Miss Coons, hey, one of our other lactation consultants just hopped on here. She's a NICU nurse, working in the hospital still. We love you. Okay, here's my boob. I'm going to talk about latch. I'm going to use my hand for baby's mouth. I have so many moms that come in and I show them how to latch, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so much better. This feels so much better. So if you guys right now are struggling with a shallow latch, maybe you think it's a shallow latch, maybe it hurts really bad, try getting a deeper latch. You guys are throwing out some good questions out there regards to latch, so I want to make sure to touch on those. Audible swallow noises when breastfeeding. Yeah, that's a good sign. We want to hear swallowing. Okay, so if this is your breast, this is baby's mouth. What I like to do when I'm latching a baby is rub the nipple under baby's nose to get them to open big and wide. When they open big and wide, their lower lip, which is right here, you want to anchor that lower lip nice and low, like almost near the edge of the areola. Use your areola as your landmarkers for latch, not the nipple. So, and you're gonna bring baby to your breast. So baby's gonna open big and wide. We're gonna get the lower lip nice and low, and then we're gonna scoop up and over the nipple towards the top of the areola. So it's almost like a two-part latch, lower lip, and then we're scooping with the upper lip, okay? So like if your boob is right here and baby's coming from this way, it helps to support your breast. Maybe sandwich that breast, give them a good portion of the breast that they can latch onto, and then you're gonna latch them this way, okay? So we not only want the nipple in baby's mouth, but a good portion of the breast in that areola. That's why we call it breastfeeding, not nipple feeding. What I see a lot of moms do, and maybe throw your hand up, give me a little wave if you feel like this is what you do. You just kind of get baby here, they open up, and then you kind of like shove your boob in their mouth. I see that a lot. Anybody? A lot of times that's a guarantee for a shallow latch. So really wait for baby to open and then bring baby onto the breast. And that's going to be the same no matter what position you're nursing in. If they're in football hold, you're going to bring them up onto the breast this way. Okay, yes, you guys, try it tonight. Try this new latch technique. I really want you guys to practice your latch. I mean, you're breastfeeding 8 to 12 times a day, so you have plenty of time to practice, okay? Lower jaw, upper jaw. Another good thing to think of is if you had a big fat sandwich, you would have to squeeze that down and then get your lower lip on the bottom and bring it over and bite down. So essentially that's what you're doing when baby's breastfeeding, okay? Let me see if there was any other questions on latch that I wanted to touch on. I know you guys are I'm getting a lot of questions about nipple shields. So I'll talk about nipple shields now since it's kind of part of latching and you guys are throwing it out there. Nipple shields are a thin silicone. It almost looks like a bottle nipple. It's really thin. It goes over your nipple to help baby latch. So nipple shields can kind of get a lot of flack and negative comments. I think they're a good tool. It's almost like training wheels for getting baby to the breast. So if you have a baby that is struggling with latch, if no matter what you do, you can't get them to latch, then I think a nipple shield can be helpful. So it can help get baby back to the breast, encourage baby to nurse from the breast. So you just kind of pop it on your nipple. I like to invert them a little bit, pop it on there. You still want to try to get a deep latch when you're using a nipple shield. So trying to use that same technique so baby does get a deep latch. One thing that you want to be aware of when it comes to nipple shields, if you're using a nipple shield in the early days of breastfeeding, let's say in the hospital before, a couple days after baby delivers, before your milk comes in, sometimes it can inhibit the stimulation of the breast that tells your body to make milk. So a lot of times we'll see moms who are using a nipple shield in the beginning aren't getting their milk in as soon, or maybe they're struggling with milk supply because it's not stimulating the breast as much. You may also see that baby isn't really getting any milk through the nipple shield. So unless you have milk that's actually flowing and filling up that shield, sometimes when they're on there, they're sucking, but they're not really getting anything, and it's not really stimulating your breast very well. I actually had a consult for this exact reason today, and so I had the mom try latching without the nipple shield. I was like, let's just not even do that. Let's see how baby does. Her baby was only a week old, and baby latched great without the nipple shield. So for those of you using nipple shields, maybe try every day, every feeding, just for like a minute or two, or until your baby gets mad, try latching without it. I know that some babies are used to it and it's hard, but I also have heard great stories from moms who have ditched the nipple shield when baby's 3 months old, 5 months old, 6 months old. So if you keep trying, a lot of times you can get baby back to the breast without using a shield. Another good tip is, if they're nursing with the shield, maybe take it off halfway through the feeding and then try to latch without it. Or when you switch sides, maybe try that second side without using the nipple shield and see if that helps. Okay, lastly, so simple. We've gone through SIM, PL. Now we're at E. E stands for experts. So utilize your lactation experts. In the hospital, ask the nurses. You can request a lactation consultant see you. Some hospitals, it's kind of first come, first serve, or they save it for the higher risk moms, but it doesn't hurt to ask. And I always say ask, pretty soon after delivery. Don't wait until you're like ready to roll out the door, because they may not have a time available for you. Yes, this is saving in the Legendary Milk account for 24 hours under their stories. So yeah, get help in the hospital before you go home. And it is normal to feel like, okay, I'm going home. Like I feel like I got this, the latch is good. It happens when you're at home. Obviously you don't have the nurses to ask. Find a lactation consultant in your area. I know that, right now with COVID-19 going on, it's a little bit less accessible. Some pediatricians' offices have lactation consultants in their office and are still seeing patients. Again, we're doing virtual consults. I know a lot of other lactation consultants are doing that. There are still some that are doing in-person consults, but getting help sooner rather than later is huge. So don't be that mom who has sore nipples for 6 weeks, because, it's something that we can usually fix in that first week or so and make it so much easier for you. I've been getting a lot of questions. How do you encourage the baby to open their mouth wider? So I like to rub your nipple right here, like right under baby's nose or under their lip. A lot of times that's kind of like pressing the button to get them to open wider. I had a consult this week and the mom was like, oh, so I press here to activate the baby. And I was like, yep, that's the activate button on the baby. So maybe that'll stick in your head. You guys will remember that. Sometimes you bring baby to the breast and that first time that they go to latch, they open up their mouth big and wide and it's perfect. And then you like miss the boat. And then after that, they're just kind of like barely opening their mouth. I see that a lot. So if you're struggling with that, like you missed that big wide open mouth, what I like to do is kind of take baby away from the breast, maybe burp them, maybe just hold them away or change their position for a second and then bring them back to the breast. Sometimes that'll reset to where they'll give you that wide open mouth again. So try that. All right, I'm gonna go. So that was the simple. Those are my tips that I think are really helpful. And now I'm gonna go answer some of the questions that I saw today that I thought were really good questions. And if you guys have any other questions, I'm gonna pay more attention now that I'm not doing my spiel. Can shields affect your milk supply? Yes, shields can definitely affect your milk supply, especially in those early days, because it's a barrier between baby's mouth and the breast. So your breast isn't getting that direct breastfeeding contact from baby. So it's something that you want to pay attention to. It doesn't always happen, but yes, it's something that we want to be aware of. For a baby who will not latch at all and your choice is, use a nipple shield or give baby a bottle, I would definitely use the nipple shield, because then baby's getting used to being at the breast. They're eating from the breast, so it's becoming more of a natural process for them, something that they're used to. However, just keep a close eye on supply and making sure that baby is getting something from that nipple shield. Okay, I got a lot of questions about pain and sore nipples, and I know that I've been seeing some questions on here about that too. Again, latch is key. So if you have sore nipples, try to get a deeper latch. A lot of times when we're latching, just going back to that, you're looking down, you're paying attention to the top of the breast and what that top lip looks like, and you're not paying attention really to that bottom lip, or what it looks like underneath the breast, which is actually the most important part of the latch. Getting that lower lip well below the nipple is the most important part, because that lower jaw is doing the majority of work when baby's nursing. So we really want to make sure that we are getting that lower lip nice and low on the breast, and then scoop up and over with the top lip. Really, with that top lip, all you need to do is clear the nipple. If you get up and over that nipple as far as you can, if that lower lip is in a good position, then you are good. You probably have a deep latch, and you'll know if you have a good latch if it's comfortable. So if it feels different than before, if all of a sudden, wow, this is better, or it doesn't feel like baby's biting, now it feels like a pulling and tugging sensation, that can be a good indicator that you did it right. So when you're looking down at your breast and how baby is latched, where that top lip isn't necessarily going to be your indicator of whether or not you have a deep latch. In addition to talking about pain and sore nipples, I also wanted to talk about some remedies that you can do to help with the pain. So nipple cream is super helpful. If you guys have a nipple cream that you're using, I would try to use it after every feeding. I like to prescribe a prescription nipple cream for my clients. So it is amazing and it works so good. And a lot of times what we do is we'll fix the latch. So we'll really work on that. We'll use a prescription nipple cream, and then I'll have mom either use like a gel pad, like a hydrogel pad that's made for sore nipples in addition to the cream. Or Medela makes these, they're called TheraShells for sore nipples. And it's basically like a plastic dome that you can put in your bra so nothing rubs or touches your nipples. Those work really great at healing sore nipples as well. So using a good nipple cream and either like a hydrogel pad or those shells, that can really help with the nipple pain and healing sore nipples. But again, see somebody, make sure you have a good latch. Sometimes sore nipples and pain can be from a tongue tie. So that's where the skin underneath the baby's tongue is a little bit too short or too close to the tip. And baby can't latch efficiently, and so a lot of times they'll clamp down and really make those nipples sore. So if you notice that in your baby, or if you have a hunch that maybe that's going on, I would definitely recommend scheduling a consult with a lactation consultant, or maybe asking your pediatrician. With the tongue tie, it can cause sore nipples, decreased milk supply. Again, it's that whole spiral of not having a good latch and all those things that can go wrong with breastfeeding. So, I would definitely check that out too. Feeding frequency. So I told you guys I would talk about feeding frequency. So in those first couple of weeks, you're going to feed on demand. So don't worry about a routine. Don't worry about a schedule. It doesn't really exist right now. And breastfeeding and schedules are a little bit harder to kind of put together. So don't stress about that in the beginning. Newborn babies eat about every 2 to 3 hours. That is average. That is like at minimum. So don't let your baby go longer than 3 hours if they're just, a couple weeks old. That means you're going to be setting your alarm. You're going to be waking up in the middle of the night to feed your baby until they get up to their birth weight. And then most pediatricians will say it's okay to let them sleep as they want, as long as they want to at night. If baby wants to feed all the time, so a lot of times we'll see a big difference. So in those first couple of days after baby's born, your milk hasn't come in yet, baby may want to feed more frequently, or you feel like baby just cluster feeds or does a little feeding frenzy and nurses, and then your milk comes in and then things change a little bit. Maybe those feedings become a little bit shorter. Maybe there's a little bit more time in between those feedings because baby's filling up a little bit more because you have more milk. So that's something that I notice, mom's struggling with is in that first couple of days, baby's eating so frequently, and then it shifts once your milk comes in. And it's good because sometimes you get a little bit of a break. Instead of eating every hour, maybe baby is eating every 2 to 3 hours. But just pay attention to what's going on. Don't worry so much about, he was doing this and now he's doing this. Those are all normal transitions when your milk comes in. I'm breastfeeding every 1.5 to 2 hours at 7 weeks. Is that normal? Every baby's different. And I guess it kind of depends on what's going on. So when you're feeding your baby, some things that I like to have moms do just from the beginning is always offer both sides. So start baby on one side. I usually say let them go up to 20-25 minutes. Ideally, you want them to be drinking and swallowing when they're on the breast. So listening and hearing for swallowing. I know somebody asked that question earlier. You should see like 2-3 sucks and then some swallows. So you do want to hear baby swallowing when they're on the breast. Take them off. When they're done, offer that second side. If baby wants that second side, great. If they don't, that's okay as well. Every baby's different. They may want both sides or they may want only one side, and that's okay. But if you have a baby that's eating very frequently all the time and doesn't seem to be satisfied, make sure you're offering both sides. Listen for those swallows. And, if your baby's older and they're still eating, that frequently, it may be worth chatting with someone just to see what's going on. Some people have more milk storage capacity than others. You can make enough milk for your baby, but if you have a lower storage capacity of breast milk in your breasts, maybe if you have smaller breasts, they might not get as full throughout the day. And so you may have, more frequent feedings where you feed your baby 10 times a day, another mom feeds her baby 7 times a day. Both babies get the same amount of milk. It's just a different quantity and more frequently throughout the day. Okay, so somebody's asking about the haka. So this is something I wanted to talk about because I get so many questions, and I also see people maybe not using them in the best way. So I wanted to kind of clarify something with, those soft silicone pumps. There's various brands of them. But I think that those pumps are great, and they are amazing at helping you create a good little stash of milk. So a few things about those pumps. Do you need to start off right off of the bat, using a soft silicone pump? No, you don't. If you feel like you have the hang of breastfeeding and you want to start maybe using that once or twice a day just to collect some extra milk, I think that's totally fine. I just don't want you stressing yourself out even more by adding something else to your routine, because using those pumps while you're breastfeeding can take a little bit of practice. So make sure you have the hang of breastfeeding first before you're adding in a pump during your breastfeeding session. So with those soft silicone pumps, ideally they work the best when you're breastfeeding baby on one side and you have the pump on the other side. So it's suctioning milk and collecting milk in there for you that you can then save. However, you do not want it to take milk away from your baby. So this is the point I wanted to make, because I have seen this a lot. I only use it when I'm so full. It's great if you're feeling like your breasts are too full and you just want to, remove a little bit of milk. It's great for that as well. So when you're using this, I have seen a couple consults where babies have been underfed because mom was using her silicone pump too early in the feeding and taking milk away from the baby. And so then baby was wanting to feed more frequently and wasn't seeming satisfied after breastfeeding because the haka or whichever pump you're using was taking too much milk away from baby. So what I like to do, put baby on the very first side. So side number 1, let baby finish that side. Put baby on side number 2, and then put that silicone pump on the first side. So on the side that baby's already fed off of, you may not get as much milk that way, but that's okay. At least you're not taking milk away from the baby. Any other questions about those types of pumps? In addition to those silicone pumps, hand pumps are also great. So I know that those soft silicone pumps are super popular right now, but hand pumps have been around for a long time, and a lot of the pump companies make them, but it's basically like the bottle connected to a flange, and it has a little handle that you can put on your breast and just suction that way. So sometimes it's quicker than using a soft silicone pump. You can throw them in your purse, or if you're really full at home, you don't want to pull out your pump and do a whole plug it in, double pump. You can just use one of those really quick to relieve some of that fullness. Let's see. Do they work for everyone? I've watched all the videos and can't seem. So I have found that those soft silicone pumps, there is a trick to putting them on. So watch the videos. I know you said that you've done that. But you want to suction the bulb and then flip that flange. So put that on and then release the suction of the bulb so you can get a good suction on there. Other times they tend to fall off or get kicked off by baby. So I have also found that they tend to work better in the first few months of breastfeeding. So in those first few months, typically you have more milk, the milk flows a little bit more freely, and you're breastfeeding more frequently. So I have found that moms have more success with those in the earlier months of breastfeeding, and then as she continues to breastfeeding, the success of that isn't as good as it was in the beginning. And I think it's just because the milk isn't flowing as freely. It's not as controlled by hormones as it is in the beginning. So if you're having that is common. I do see that a lot. Okay, I also wanted to talk about, let's see. Oh, engorgement. So this is one of those things that happens in those first couple of weeks that really can stress you out with breastfeeding. It's really uncomfortable. It's really painful. And it also seems like this roadblock, like things were going really well. I went home. I felt like I had the hang of it. And then all of a sudden, boom, my boobs are huge and they hurt and my baby won't latch because my boobs are like basketballs and there's no skin to latch onto. This is the time when we get a lot of like crying, really upset phone calls. And so engorgement for some moms can be a big difference, a big change, a big event. It's like, whoa, my milk wasn't here yesterday and boom, now it's here. Some other moms just may feel like a fullness or kind of tingling, or maybe something's a little bit different, or they have more milk. Oh, coconut. Yeah, I really like coconut oil too for sore nipples. I'm glad you threw that out there. So with engorgement, it's normal to feel like it totally screwed up breastfeeding, or if you're really struggling when your milk comes in. But there are some things that you can do to get over that hump to get you back to successfully breastfeeding. So that's what I wanted to talk about. The good thing about engorgement is usually it only lasts for like 1 or 2 days. And there's some things that you can do to make it go away even sooner. So I like ibuprofen for engorgement. You know, one thing about engorgement is it feels like all of a sudden your boobs are just full of milk and you need to like empty them. And that's part of it, but you get your pump out and you pump and then nothing comes out. And so you're like, well, what's going on? My boobs still hurt and I got no milk out. A lot of engorgement is your body's response to your milk coming in. So it's inflammation, it's milk, it's lymph, it's all of that combined. So it's almost like, you know, your body is having an allergic type or an immune type response to your milk coming in. So ibuprofen every 6 hours can really help with that. Excuse me. That can really help with the inflammation and the pain with engorgement. Ice can be super helpful. So I like to use ice after baby nurses, maybe just up in this area, even some bags of frozen peas or ice packs. That can help with the inflammation that goes along with engorgement. Another great tip is I call these booby bowls, and just get out some big mixing bowls from your kitchen, fill them with warm water and a couple tablespoons of Epsom salts, set them on your table, and literally just lean your boobs into the bowls and then rest your arms on the table. I'm gonna put a pillow right here. If you do that before you feed or pump, that can really help kind of loosen things up, move things around, and help with some of that pain that comes along with engorgement. So those things can be really helpful in kind of getting you over that hump. If you're struggling with latch because of engorgement, because that skin is so tight now that there's really nothing for baby to latch onto, I would try to pump for a couple of minutes. If you have a hand pump, you could do that. Or if you have a regular pump, pull that out and maybe just pump for a couple of minutes. See if you can get some milk out, relieve some of that pressure so baby can latch on. Another thing that you can do is just do some hand expression and just kind of squeezing back and forth around the nipple in a clockwise motion to kind of soften up the area to give baby something to latch onto. For the Epsom salts, you want to do warm water. So warm water with Epsom salts. When I had my first daughter, when my milk came in, I was so engorged. I really struggled with that. She really struggled to latch. And what I would do is I would have my pump ready. I would, like, whichever side I was going to latch on, I would pump for like a minute or two until I felt like some relief. And then I would have a bottle there of the pumped milk just in case. And I would, even though I tried to soften the nipple and kind of get things ready for her to latch, she still really struggled. And so what worked for me was I would first do that, and then I would try to get her to latch. I wouldn't let her get to that point where, you know, she was screaming and crying. So what I would do is I would have a bottle, just a small bottle, like an ounce or so of pumped milk. If she would get to that point where she was freaking out and crying, I would give her a few sucks from that bottle, and then I would take it away, and then I would try to latch again. And so that's called the bait and switch technique, but I would use that, and sometimes it would take me 20-30 minutes, and I would just go back and forth, but that would calm her down, get her sucking, and then I would take it away and quickly try to latch her on. And then once we got past that engorgement period, I didn't have to do that anymore, but it would help encourage her to get onto the breast, and it would give me more time to work with her to get her to latch, because, you know, she knew something was coming. You know, you're at the breast, you're going to get something, and so that really worked for us. With my first, I never got engorged, not even a little. Yes, I mean, everybody experiences it differently. So I have had many moms come in and, oh, has your milk come in? Well, I don't know. It feels fuller, and like the milk changed color, and it seems like she's getting something now. And a lot of times, yeah, you know, you may not notice a huge difference. Everybody kind of has a different experience, which is why, going back to this whole Instagram Live in general and that photo that was posted, I think why it was, you know, triggering for some and not so much for others was because everybody kind of has a different experience when it comes to that. Another thing I wanted to talk about was we got a lot of questions about sleeping through the night and milk supply. So I get this question a lot. Actually, I just did a blog post on it that's going to be posted this week. But when baby starts sleeping through the night, do I need to pump? Or also, you know, if you're still in those first couple of weeks, can I sleep through the night, maybe have my partner feed the baby so I can get some sleep? And in those first couple of weeks, the answer to that question is unfortunately no. If you're going to breastfeed and, you know, we need to protect your milk supply. Also, you'll probably find that if you go longer than 3-4 hours between breastfeeding sessions or, you know, removing milk using a pump or whatever method, that your breasts are going to get pretty uncomfortable. So it's not really that realistic that you could sleep all night long while your partner gives babies bottles. What you could do is, if you're really struggling, and this is one thing I wanted to talk about, you guys, is that it's okay to take a break. It's okay to say, you know what, I'm just going to pump. I don't really want to breastfeed this time. I'm really stressed out and I just need a break. And that is totally okay. Yes, I love all the hearts coming up. Don't be so hard on yourself because you will last longer and be more motivated to breastfeed if you give yourself some breaks and give yourself permission to give baby a bottle and maybe step away if you're stressed out. So, you know, my friend just had a baby last week and she ended up getting really sick and she had a fever and she felt terrible. And so, you know, the baby's only 3 or 4 days old. And so dad got up and fed the baby bottles at night. Mom still got up though when baby fed, but she pumped instead because she was like, I just can't even, you know, I can barely get up and pump, let alone breastfeed. And so, you know what? That was okay. And it worked out. And they did what they had to do. And she's still okay breastfeeding. So, you know, that's one thing I think we're so hard on ourselves, especially in those first couple weeks. Cut yourselves some slack because pretty soon you're going to, you're going to be out of this phase and it's going to be a lot easier. So if you need to take breaks just to get you to the next day, that is okay. You guys deserve it. You take her. I'm just going to go, pump in my room and I just need a moment. And it was okay. She breastfed for a long time and we eventually got the hang of it. With my second baby, it was a different story. I think everybody kind of, it's a little bit different with the second and maybe your attitude and how you're going into things. So with my second, my best friend got married and her wedding, which I was, in her wedding was when my baby was 2 weeks old. So I was 2 weeks postpartum and, had rehearsal dinner and all the other stuff that goes along with being in a wedding. And so luckily it was my second baby because I was a little bit more comfortable, but I pumped a couple days before the wedding. I made sure I had enough milk. And then when I was at the wedding and throughout the day, my sister was watching my kids and I was pumping, throughout the day, and she got bottles and it was totally fine. It did not disrupt breastfeeding at all. And she was only 2 weeks old. I think I would have been a little bit more nervous about it had it been my first. But she did just fine. It didn't, and some of you guys are asking about nipple confusion. If you have a baby that's breastfeeding well and latch is good and you kind of feel like you're getting the hang of it, I think it's fine to offer a pacifier or to offer, bottles because sometimes you need that pacifier for a little bit of sanity. And if breastfeeding is going well, I have not seen a pacifier disrupt breastfeeding. Where I have seen those things become an issue is in the early days, if baby isn't latching, so they're only getting bottles and they won't latch to the breast, and then they're getting lots of bottles and pacifiers. Sometimes that's when it can become a little bit more challenging. But if things are going well, I think those things are totally fine. I think I may have gotten off track a little bit. I wanted to talk about milk supply at night. So that's kind of where I was going with this whole thing. In those early days, yes, it's okay to take a break, but no, you can't sleep through the night. If you don't want to breastfeed at night, that's okay. Maybe you wake up and you pump if that seems easier for you while your significant other feeds the baby. If you sleep through the night, and you may find that your milk supply will go down. So in those early weeks, it's just not really possible because your breasts probably will get too full and you'll feel like you need to empty them. However, as baby gets older and they start to stretch that nighttime sleep, maybe now they're sleeping like 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 hours at night. So once you get to that point, do you need to wake up and pump? Maybe. Everybody's different. So I get this question a lot. I would say you want to pay attention to your milk supply when this starts to happen. Probably what you're going to notice is the first few days that baby sleeps through the night, you're going to wake up and your boobs are going to feel really full and engorged because they're not used to going that long without feeding or pumping. So if you get, so you'll notice that. As your body gets used to it though, now your body's like, okay, it's been a couple days and baby's sleeping 8 hours at night. It will start to slow down milk production at night. So you won't wake up feeling full or engorged anymore. Now, ideally, in the perfect breastfeeding world, which I don't know if that exists, but the ideal situation would be your body gets the message that baby's sleeping through the night, and then you still make enough milk during the day, and it doesn't affect your supply. So yes, that can happen. Some moms can sleep through the night. They don't have to wake up and pump. I never had to wake up and pump in the middle of the night, and my supply was fine. But pay attention. If you start to notice that your supply dips around the same time that baby is sleeping through the night, that may be why. So you may need to do some sort of milk removal in the middle of the night, whether it's a dream feed or maybe you wake up and you pump. But if you're seeing that correlation, then you may be one of those lucky moms that has to wake up and pump in the middle of the night. A lot of you are asking about milk supply, and one thing I want to mention is milk supply, which I talked about in the beginning, is supply and demand. So the more milk that's removed from the breast, the more it's going to signal your body to make milk. So the one thing that is really important if you're trying to increase your milk supply is milk removal. So if you're already breastfeeding exclusively and you want to increase your milk supply, you need to add in some pumping sessions. So that may be 1 or 2 pumping sessions a day. For some moms whose supply is low and they're not making enough milk to meet baby's needs, then they may need to pump for like 10 or 15 minutes after every breastfeeding session to help increase their milk supply. So this mom says she dream feeds usually at 3 a.m. That's another thing I want to mention. If you guys have low supply, waking up and pumping in the middle of the night, especially between 1 and 6 a.m. is huge. You have a prolactin surge at that time, but that can really, really help your milk supply if you pump at that time. A dream feed is baby still sleeping and you go in there and put them on the boob and feed them while they're still asleep. So they're not waking up to feed, but you're just going in there and feeding them. So, and I know you guys have a lot of questions about Legendary milk supplements. I am going to throw those questions back to Legendary. They're the experts on their products. But if you have any specific questions, send it over to Legendary. But that's always great too in combination with extra pumping, is adding in a supplement or maybe switching up your supplements. All right, let me see if there's anything else I wanted. Oh, another thing I wanted to touch on is in those first couple days, when your milk comes in, you know, when will that happen? So on average, it's between day 3 and day 5 postpartum. However, if your milk isn't coming in, if it seems delayed, if it's 5, 6, 7 days, maybe longer, you know, what can you do to get your milk to come in? If baby, a lot of times what I see is a shallow latch, just not very efficient breastfeeding. If we fix that, get baby to feed on both sides, really get good active feedings, and then add in some extra pumping, that can help bring your milk in sooner. If you're going on like between day 7 and 14,